Hi, my name is Jeff Mietus. I'm a PGA professional. I'd like to welcome you to the Tee to Green Academy, sponsored by Custom Turf. And today we have the Western New York PGA President, Dan Antonucci, head professional at Niagara Frontier Golf Club. And today we're going to talk about bunker play, and we're going to get into the specifics of what makes a good bunker player and how to hit good bunker shots. First of all, Dan, welcome. Thanks for doing this for you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always great to spend some time with you, and let's talk a little bit about golf today.
And so, Dan, we're going to talk about bunker shots. Now, there's a variety of bunker shots. Obviously, there's short bunker shots, long bunker shots, fairway bunker shots, plug bunker shots. There's a million ways to hit bunker shots. Why don't you start off with what you think are some of the fundamentals that people might often miss when they're trying to hit bunker shots?
Well, first off, let's talk about just a basic bunker shot that's on a flat spot in a bunker. So first of all, people need to make sure that they have the right club. So obviously sand wedges, 56-degree wedges would be the club that I would reach for. Some people might use a 60-degree wedge, but you got to make sure that you have some kind of loft on the club, 56 degrees or more. Also, we'll talk a little bit later about what's called the bounce on the bottom of the club, but I personally like to use a 56-degree wedge. When I come into the sand trap, I just kind of walk in, taking a look at the shot, kind of getting a visual on how far you got to hit the shot or where you want to hit it as you're walking in. And also as you're walking in, you can kind of tell with your feet how much sand is in the sand trap. So when I line up to hit the bunker shot, I like to place the ball. I'm a right-handed golfer, just a little bit center, a little bit left of center. Basically, I like to keep the butt end of the club pointing a little bit more towards my belly button, and I like to open up the club face a little bit so you can use the bounce of the club to cut through the sand. So when I go to prepare and hit the shot, I'm actually aiming maybe about 2 inches behind the ball. And if you can picture in your mind, what we do for our junior kids is we have them bend over and draw a rectangle around the ball, kind of about the size of a dollar bill. And when we take the swing, we want them to enter, like I said, about 2 inches behind the ball, and then explode the sand and the ball, and everything together gets thrown onto the green. But the most important part, Jeff, is the follow through. You got to make sure that you swing forward and rotate to your front leg, and make sure that you follow through, because this is what's going to help you propel the ball onto the green.
The phrase I always used to like to use, Dan, was zip. I like people to have zip, like they cut through that shot when they're hitting a bunker shot. They're not lollygagging into the sand or just dropping the club into the sand. I always felt like you had to have, even if it's a shorter shot, you need to have a little bit of speed cutting through that sand, right?
That's absolutely correct. You got to have forward momentum. You got to cut through the sand, zip through the sand. Whatever idea a player can get in his mind to do that. Anybody who stops where the ball is just going to plop right in front of you. So you got to have some momentum with your club, and you create that by turning your body. All right, and I like your term zipping. In fact, I'm going to use that in my next bunker lesson, and get that club moving. Hit the sand, not the ball. You'll create spin, and when that ball flies up on the green, you'll have more accuracy, you'll have more backspin, and you have a better chance of getting it close to the hole.
I also think, Dan, that people forget you take a 56 degree and you open it 5-10 degrees. If you open it 10 degrees, which isn't a lot, now you've got a 66-degree wedge in that bunker, right? And you've also created more bounce at the bottom of the club. Can you explain how that works for the average golfer?
Well, as Jeff says, as you open up your club face, you do create more loft on the club. And also it kind of, if you look at it, it looks like your club is now aiming a little bit more to the right of your target. So that might mean that you have to open up your stance to compensate for that. I always try to make it look like the leading edge of my club is aiming at the hole, depending on how much I've opened it. So as you open a club, the bounce, which is on the bottom of the sole of your club, can help you cut through the sand more. So for a sand wedge, a 56-degree wedge, I always tell my members or players that you maybe want a little bit more bounce on your club. So might be an 8-degree bounce, 10-degree bounce, 12-degree bounce, but what it really comes down to is your personal preference. I personally use a 10-degree bounce on my sand wedge. It's just what I like. I do a lot of chipping with my sand wedge too. So I just like to have a slight bit more bounce on my 56 compared to my 52 and 60.
So with a little less bounce, that club will tend to dig a little more, Nooch, because people, there's different bunker techniques. Some guys will come in shallow, right? Some guys will come in steeper, or you have to come in shallow or steeper for different bunker shots. So how does the bounce affect that? So say I've got 8 degrees of bounce and I don't open it up. How does that affect my bunker shot?
Well, theory-wise, with the less bounce, the more the club will kind of cut into the turf or the sand. So it's really personal preference. And it also has to do, like what you said, Jeff, is how the player comes into the ball, the path they're coming in, if they're coming in steep or shallow. There's golf companies out now that offer multi-bounces and also multi-different grinds too. So you can actually pick out a club with the right bounce and the right grind. And what I mean by that is how they form the bottom of the club and how they design it. So you can pick out a club that's really made for your swing. So you could use something totally different than what I could use, and I could use something totally different than another player. You just have to find the one that you like the best.
And the thing I thought you said that was interesting is that the handle of the club is still pointing at your core or your belly. I see a lot of players, they get in that bunker and they want to shove that handle forward where the butt end of the club aims left of them. And then that moves that handle forward. To me, that's a steepening move. Can you elaborate, like ball position and shaft angle at address, how that might affect the player's shot?
Well, when I'm in sand traps, I do like to have the butt end pointing towards my core. It just makes it easier for me to open up the club face, which I think is important to get a little bit more loft on your club, use the bounce a little bit better. If you do push your hands forward, it's going to affect. I think it makes it more easy for a player to dig into the sand. So that's why we try to teach our players to have the butt end a little bit back. So you can move ball position around too. You can move it up towards your front foot. The ball has a tendency to fly a little bit higher. I would never move it back further than the middle of my stance, unless you had some kind of difficult lie or maybe a downhill lie, something like that. So I think your best bet to play a basic bunker shot is an inch forward of the center of your stance.
Okay, so here's the next question then. What do we do when we've got, so that's a stock bunker shot. You're going to carry it 10 to 20 yards from a bunker. What if I have a 30-yard carry from a bunker and I need to carry it a little longer than maybe I'm comfortable with my 56 or opening my blade, a little longer carry around the green? To me, that's a little bit more difficult bunker shot. How do you adjust for a longer greenside bunker shot?
Well, I try to use the same technique pretty much all the time. The only thing I would vary is how much I open my club face. So now if you're saying we have a longer bunker shot, I wouldn't open my club face as much. Or maybe it gets to the point where it's actually square. And you also have to have the feel of how hard you need to hit that shot. So if now it's a 30-foot bunker shot, you got to swing a little bit harder. So this is where practice comes into play. If you have an opportunity to go to a facility that has a bunker but close to their practice screen where you can practice these shots, because if you get good at your bunker shots, you can cut a lot of strokes off your score. Now, if we go even farther, Jeff, if you have like a 30-yard or 40-yard or 50-yard bunker shot, that's something that we don't run into very often. To me, that's one of the hardest shots in golf. And if you haven't practiced that, it could be a real hard shot for you to get onto the green. So go out and practice. Find a place. Bring your sand wedge out. I know it's not super exciting, but it's a really important part of your golf game.
One of the things I'll do, Nooch, if I have a 40, 50, 60-yard bunker shot is I might take my pitching wedge. I might take my 9-iron and open it up and make sure I have a shallow path. What are your thoughts on using a little less loft, maybe a little less bounce for a longer shot like that?
That's obviously one way you could do it. I mean, absolutely. And I think that's actually a much easier way than trying to use a 56 and swinging harder. I have a tendency not to go with any less loft than my pitching wedge. I don't feel super comfortable with, say, a 9-iron or maybe even an 8-iron. But that is more where I'm trying to get my club head to get closer to the ball, not blade it so it goes flying over the green, but not take as much sand. Because if you take too much sand on a longer shot like that, it's just going to kind of just puff out and land short of the green. So I'm just trying to hit the sand a little closer to the ball.
Do you do anything to weaken your grip, or do you use the same grip, Nooch? Will you try to weaken your right hand? Or I'm not a player that likes to weaken my grip for bunker shots, but I know certain people do. What do you feel about changing your grip for a bunker shot?
I know people do that, and I think it works for a lot of people. I kind of have a neutral grip myself. I don't have a super strong grip. I don't have a weak grip. So for consistency, I like to try to keep my grip the same pretty much all the time. The only time I really weaken my grip is if I have a flop shot when I'm trying to hit it up in the air and get it to stop pretty quick. So I think a player who maybe uses a strong left-hand grip could benefit by weakening their grip when they're in a sand trap, just so they're not using too much, let's say, wrist action, if you want to put it that way. So yes, I think for some people that works very well.
What about sand conditions? Like, wet sand is very different from a dry, fluffy, brand new sand. How do you adapt for wet sand versus fluffy sand?
Well, fluffy sand, if it's really fluffy, and you don't really have any dirt or hard sand underneath to actually cut through and zip through, like you say, and use the bounce of your club, you can tell when you walk into the sand trap how much sand is in there. So if it's a fluffy lie, you got to make sure that you don't dig down into the sand. So when you get into the sand trap, and most of us will kind of wiggle our feet in to set our base, kind of tells us how much sand is in the traps. If you're feeling a lot of fluffy sand, make sure you don't dig yourself in real deep. And you know that through your swing that you can't dig down. You got to cut through the sand a little less. Now, when the sand is real wet, I actually don't mind that at all. I think I have a little bit better control when the sand is a little bit wet. And what I do is I aim actually a little farther behind the ball. Instead of 2 inches, I'll try for 3 inches. But the super important thing is to make sure that you follow through and you get that zip going forward, and that you get your body to turn towards your target and the club gets through that sand. But I know some people, when the sand gets wet, they try to go closer to hitting the ball. They try to hit the ball or hit the ball within maybe a half an inch or an inch of the ball. It goes flying over the green. So try going 3 inches behind the ball, but just make sure you cut through with a little bit more effort.
And you'll still get that spin. I know we're 99% of bunker shots. We want to make sure to maintain that open blade so that club doesn't dig. But with a wet or a firmer lie, would you say you can get a little more square with your blade and have a little bit less bounce?
You can do that for sure. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, yeah, you bring that to my attention. I do usually do that. I don't open the club face as much because you're going to impart a pretty good amount of backspin because of the firmer wet conditions. So no, I would not open the club face as much.
Right, getting down there. What about like an uphill lie, a downhill lie, a ball above your feet, a ball below your feet in the bunker? How often do we get a really flat lie in the bunker? How do you make adjustments for, say, you're on an uphill lie near the lip, or you're on a downhill lie, or the ball's above your feet, or the ball's below your feet for bunker shots?
Well, those, you can get those shots, and in an uphill bunker shot, I think is way, way easier than a downhill bunker shot. So an uphill bunker shot, when I get into position myself at the ball, I try to get my shoulders to tilt the same angle as what the uphill lie is. So I'm not going to have the normal tilt like this. Maybe I'm going to tilt my shoulders a little bit more. I'm going to play the ball is going to be a slight bit more forward in my stance. And obviously the ball is going to go up higher real quick. So you may have to hit the ball a little bit harder, but it's easier to get the ball to stop because you're creating loft on the shot, and it's going to hit the green and hopefully not roll too much. So to me, a much easier shot than a downhill bunker shot. So when you go the other way and you have a downhill lie, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to try to take my shoulders and angle them a little bit more. So my shoulder level is about the same as the downhill lie. Sometimes the downhill lie is pretty steep, you can't do that. Same thing with the uphill lie, but you do the best you can. So for a downhill lie, sometimes you're also dealing with the edge of the bunker where the grass starts. That might get in your way. So what I do with that type of shot is I do still open up my blade, not as much, but I try to pick the club up a little bit quicker and come down a little bit quicker, again, about 2 inches behind the ball. But again, it's that forward motion of your swing that you got to keep that zip going. You got to you got to get onto your forward side, and the ball's going to fly out lower, probably going to roll a lot more. So if you have a downhill bunker shot and you get the ball on the green, probably should be okay with that.
And I guess the last question as far as bunker shots go, the specialty bunker shots, is everything we've talked about is presuming a pretty decent lie. How do you change your approach when you have a plugged lie? Like the ball's buried in the sand or halfway down. How does that affect your setup and your club position?
Well, I look at the situation. So if I have a plugged lie, and let's go back to that real fluffy sand condition, because it's plugged in there, but you can cut the blade through the sand. I'll just kind of play the same type of sand trap shot I would use as if it was just a basic flat lie. But you're going to have to hit the ball a lot harder. You're going to have to swing harder. You're going to have to use your muscle. You're going to have to keep that club, accelerating forward, and the ball will get out. You'll get it on the green. That's something that, again, if you have the ability to find a place to practice, put your ball in a sand trap, step on it, and hit some shots, and figure out how you need to do it. Now, if the sand is wetter and firmer, this is a situation where you may want to take the blade of your club, instead of opening it, you're going to close it, because this is going to help you have a tendency to dig down and get the ball out of the sand. And you're going to aim a couple inches behind the ball, and you're going to swing. And this is the one instance where you're going to try to dig down into the sand and hit that ball out. But you still, every single time, I don't care what kind of bunker shot you have, you got to have forward momentum, and you got to follow through. This shot meat is going to fly out low and, again, roll a lot. So if you get it on the green, pat yourself on the back and go try to make that putt.
All right, good information. I think, I always thought that as a good player, once you learn bunker play, it's really not very difficult, and it's something you can be pretty confident in. You can see why a tour player might aim for a bunker as opposed to the rough, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, tour players, they're the highly skilled best players in the world. So a bunker doesn't scare them. They know that they can produce the spin and the accuracy and get that ball real close, especially when greens are pretty firm. It's for them, it's easier to hit and create spin out of the sand trap than hitting out of some, greenside rough that's, 4 or 5 inches deep.
Well, great. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate your input today. It's always fun to get together with another PGA pro and talk about different techniques and different ways we can do things. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, Dan, to maybe get better at their bunker play, how do they do that?
Well, they can call Niagara Frontier Golf Club. Phone number is 716-745-3329, extension 202. Or they can email me at pgagolfman@aol.com. I'm one of the last AOL guys out there. And also, I have 2 teaching PGA professionals on staff, Frank Garcia and Matt Clark. There's 3 PGA professionals here to help anybody to improve their game. And we just love working with all golfers, from beginners to the highly skilled players. So you can give us a call, and we'd love to be your golf coach.
Well, thanks again, Dan. It was a pleasure to have Dan Antonucci, head professional, Niagara Frontier Golf Club, and president of the West New York PGA on today. Thanks for your time, Dan, and I look forward to seeing you shortly. I'll be up there to play. We got to get together.
That'd be great, Jeff. I really appreciate the opportunity coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Dan.